So hopefully that fixed things. Sorry guys, I don't know what's the issue, but the live just stopped for some reason. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm live again. I don't know what happened, but it looks like, unfortunately, the live stopped for some reason. Quite annoying. Next time, I will make sure that I don't stream this and I will use something like Zoom webinar or something so that we're not experiencing issues like this. Yeah. Okay. Okay, awesome. So we'll keep going. Annoying, everyone dropped off. 3 people watching now. But I guess it is what it is. PGWP group. Let's share. Okay. If you guys are here, just let me know you guys are watching, because if everyone's gone, then I might as well just record something and put something up. Everyone, technical difficulties, live ended for some reason. Here is the new live. Hi, Akshit. It's been 250 days since you applied for your PGWP and you checked with MP and you called IRCC. They said that eligibility was not started. I mean, it is beyond the regular processing time. What is the regular processing? 220 days now or something? Let's just quickly take a look. Work permit, 212 days. And so it's a couple of months after that, right? And so I would still wait. I would follow up via web form requesting them to start processing the application. And I would let them know that there's an unreasonable delay, that you've been waiting for 250 days. And then secondly, if it surpasses another, few months, I would potentially reach out to a lawyer to see if a writ of mandamus is going to help, to kind of force them to make a decision. But usually speaking, writ of mandamus is more of a threat to IRCC than it is effective in court. And so just take that with a grain of salt. All right, guys, I'm gonna go on with the webinar. Hopefully it won't stop again. So we were going over the document checklist. We were going over the proof of program completion. So all of these are not required. What's required is the letter of completion and a final transcript. So the degree, diploma, and certificate usually comes later, but if you have it, include it. Proof of full-time studies is usually going to be proven by the official transcript, or final transcript. It doesn't need to be official. It can be unofficial. Language requirements. So if you take your CELPIP test results, IELTS, PTE Core, TEF, and TESAF Canada, those should be included. And then the field of study requirement, proof of graduation from a eligible field of study. This is usually going to be within the letter of completion, if it's required. And so this is provided by the DLI usually. Sometimes they'll write a secondary letter just to confirm the CIP codes. And so just keep that in mind when you guys are applying, because as time goes on, more and more applications are going to require proof of CIP codes. Other supporting documentation are going to include your submission letters or letters of explanation to explain specific situations. And guys, if you guys have any questions while you're watching, let me know. Fees that you need to include. It's not that you pay in advance. You can pay in advance, but unless it's a restoration application. The application, you need to pay for $155 work permit processing fee, $100 open work permit holder fee, potentially biometrics fee if you don't have a valid biometrics, and then restoration of status for a worker is $389.75. Is it? Let me just double check, because this is very important distinction to make, because if you want to restore your status for a PGWP application, it's not just restoring status as a worker. And so let me just double confirm. So work permit 155, 100 open work permit holder fee. So you need to pay that. And then the restoration of status fee, guys, let me make this edit right now because this is important. It's $396.25. The price has gone up. Restoration of status as a student. So you're not restoring status as a worker. This is a IRCC limitation. Normally speaking, if you're restoring status, you actually just pay for restoration of status for a worker. That's all you need to do. But because of the way that IRCC's system is set up, you need to pay for restoration of status as a student, which includes the study permit fee of $150 and then restoring status $246.25. That's why it adds up to $396.25. You need to pay that plus the work permit application fee. So always keep that in mind. If you don't do that, then you haven't paid enough and the officers are not going to be approving the application. And secondly, something to keep in mind is if you're restoring status, you can't pay from inside of your, IRCC secure account or GC key, because the system limitation there exists again. So you need to go to IRCC pay fees on Google or something, click on that, and it'll let you select what payments you need to make, pay it, take the receipt, and you have to upload it as part of your application. So the key thing is that you guys need to keep in mind that these documents all exist to prove something. Documents exist to prove that you meet the requirements of the program, right? So you need to understand it that way. So you need to prove the eligibility requirement that you've never held the PGWP before. This is on the officer's end because it's internal records. But when you take a look at all of these different points, you can come back to this later on because this video is going to be saved. There are specific documents that prove it. And so you're making sure that you include all documents to be able to prove that you meet all the requirements of the program, basically. Okay. Let's go on and take a look at filling out the M5710 form. This, again, is somewhere where a lot of people make mistakes. Officers are generally lenient with mistakes on M5710 because so many people make mistakes. But go to the IRCC website and go to their, find an IRCC application package or form, and then find M5710, download it. You cannot open it on Chrome. You will need to download it and open it with Adobe. Okay, open it. Okay, once you've opened it, it's very simple, guys. A lot of people don't know this, but it is simple. So after you download the form, You scroll down and ta-da, there's you know, there's a guide for how to fill out this form, right? So, oh, just one question regarding the field of study requirement. I applied for a study permit before November 1st, 2024, which is part of the exemption. Is it best to have it in the letter of explanation? Yes, 100% you should explain things like that because officers are people and they always make mistakes. And so you need to make sure that you provide as much guidance to the officer as possible to make sure that you're approved. So if you go to the PGWP group, you'll actually see a lot of people that are like, I submitted the language test result, but I was refused because the officer didn't see it. Or like I didn't need to do this because I had the exemption, but the officer didn't know and refused me. Like when that happens, if you request reconsideration, it takes months. So your life is just uprooted. It doesn't impact the officer in any way. It only impacts you. And so it's very important you prepare a strong application from the beginning. So let's go through filling out the M5710 form together. Your UCI, it's going to be on your previous study permit application at the top right-hand corner. So it's going to be a series of 8 numbers or 12 numbers, whatever it is, fill it in. Well, actually, don't put the dashes, right? I want service in whatever language that you want. You'll be selecting, I'm applying for a work permit for the first time. It doesn't really matter here. Like I said, M5710 is a form used for all types of work permits, even including LMIA-based work permits, other IMPs. That's why the selection isn't really perfect. You fill in your details. Do you have any nicknames? Yes or no? You enter all the details. This is very simple stuff, so I'm just going to be going over it very, very fast. Place of birth, I was born in Korea. Korea. Citizenship, let's just say I'm from Bulgaria, okay? Current country and territory of residence. If you guys are applying from inside Canada, which I assume you will be writing that you are currently in Canada as whatever status. The only thing to keep in mind here is you're likely going to be a student. Some people that have their study permits expiring apply for a visitor record. So if you're a visitor, say you're a visitor. If you haven't received a decision, you have to say other, and you have to let them know that you're on maintained status. Right? And then from to, you put the dates. The thing is, in the from to dates, if you take a look at question number 7 under personal details, where does it say this? Yeah, provide the dates from and to indicate how long you've had this status. So this is not indicating what your current study permit says. This is indicating how long you've had, let's say, student status. So if you ever extended your student status, you need to write the date that you initially got the student status, and then to the date that usually it's going to be when your study permit expires. But technically, you guys need to keep in mind that your study permit is invalid 90 days after you complete your studies. So, you need to keep that in mind when you fill this out. When you make a mistake here, officers generally don't give you an issue, but, you might as well fill it in properly, right? Other territories, if you have been in other territories, if you have, in the last 5 years, lived in any other territories for more than 6 months, then put it in here. Current marital status, if you're married, say that, whatever it is. I'm just going to put single so I don't need to fill in the details of my partner. Previously been in a common law relationship or married. If yes, fill it out. All of these are very, very, personal information. And so these are very simple to fill out for you guys. So I'm just going to go through it very, very fast. English, passport number, fill it in. Take a look at your passport. Make sure the number isn't incorrect. Issue date, expiry date, that's fine. Let's see, national ID document. This is referring to any national IDs from your home country. And so let's say that you have, I don't know, like in Brazil, there would be something called the CPF. Then you would include that number and the issue date and expiry date. If you answer no, that's fine. But if you answer yes and you say you have it, then you should include this document as well as part of your application package. Something that a lot of people do is they're like, oh yes, and then they don't put the document, you have to put the document. US PR card as well, same thing. I'm gonna say no for now. Contact information, fill this information in. This again is not very difficult to answer. Coming into Canada, this is your original entry date into Canada. So the first day that you arrived in Canada. So let's say this happened, November 11th, November 5th, 2025. You put that, and wherever you entered, let's say that I entered through YV or International Airport, that's what you would put. Purpose of coming to Canada, probably going to be study for you. But keep in mind that some people come to Canada as a visitor first, then you would, write visitor. Date and place of your most recent entry would be if you went back home and were to visit again, then you would put that number. The document number is the number below it's in the top right-hand corner. It's it start with like a F or a U, and it's usually red. So take a look at that, and that would be your document number, not the application, like not the work permit number. Okay, so it's a little bit different. Let me see if I can explain that a little bit better by pulling up a sample. Let's see, sample IRCC work permit. See, here's the specimen. So here, you'll see that your UCI is here, and then this one's really horrible, huh? And then this is all blocked out. Let me just pull. Anyways, guys, if you guys search online for what the document number is, you'll be able to see it online. Fill out the document number, not the work permit number or the study permit number or whatever it is, okay? Now comes the part where things are a little bit customized for the PGWP. This is the more important part. And so details of intended work in Canada. What type of work permit are you applying for? You'll be applying for a PGWP. Again, you should be following through with the questionnaire or the guide here. And if you actually go down to the section where details of intended work, it says select whatever, it's your PGWP. If you choose an open work permit or a PGWP, leave questions 2 to 8 blank, okay? You can't leave 8 blank because it's required. So, IRCC is not perfect. So the only one I would answer is 8 as no. And then you go on, you fill in your education, post-secondary education, including university, college, or apprenticeship training. Yes. You fill in the highest level of post-secondary education. And so if you have like a master's degree back home and you came to Canada and did a diploma level program that's 1 year, you would write your master's degree, okay? And then moving on to the employment section, again, this is where you need to pay attention. For co-op and PGWP applicants, information in this section is not required. And so if you want to, you can provide information, but I'm of the opinion, why provide information when you don't need to, when officers don't use this information to assess your application? Reason behind this is a lot of people, when doing PGWP applications, they think it's so easy that they really just skip through really verifying the dates and the title and everything. And when it comes to the PR application, they realize they messed up. And then if they change it, they're at risk of getting misrepresentation on the PR application. And so this is precisely why, unless you're going to be really diving deep and, providing an accurate answer on the M5710 form, I wouldn't include it. And secondly, if you run out of space and you really want to include it, then you have to create a Word doc, copy this table, and then create a full employment history over the last 10 years and include it. Second thing you guys need to keep in mind about the employment section is it's called employment, but it says give details of your employment for the past 10 years, including if you've held government positions such as civil servant, judge, police officer, mayor, blah, blah, blah. But if you take a look at the application guide, here, let me see where it says. They want you to enter the activity, right? And so if you really follow the instructions to the T, then you should be including this as like equivalent to a personal history document. So if you're studying, if you're working, if you're unemployed, everything should be included basically, okay? And so just keep that in mind because this is something that a lot of people do miss at the end of the day. And then going on to the background information, again, this is where a lot of people make mistakes. You have to read through the section. And I don't blame you because IRCC application forms are boring, but I can tell you that like 60% of my clients, when I ask them these questions, they answer it wrong. And so the key question that people get wrong is they'll usually read through this and they're like, oh, I don't have any issues with health, blah, blah, blah. I don't have mental disorders, blah, blah, blah. But they take a look here. They're like, oh, have you remained beyond the validity? No. Have you ever been refused? And then they immediately think only Canada. But you have to order leave Canada or any other country or territory. So this includes the US, like every other country. And if you've ever been refused before, then you have to answer yes and include that information. If you don't, and IRCC has information sharing agreements with countries, right? And they find out that you lied, this is misrepresentation and a 5-year ban from Canada. And then the other one is a lot of people will answer no to this question because they just go, no, no, no. But it's have you previously applied to enter or remain in Canada? And the answer is always yes, because you're here as a student, right? So always keep that in mind. I see a lot of people making mistakes here. And then when you go to the very, very end, you don't need to sign, you don't need to date, you validate your application to make sure that you can submit it and you upload it as is, okay? So that's how to fill out the M5710 form. Hopefully that provided you with enough information. Do any of you have any actual questions regarding filling out the form? If not, I will continue on. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll jump right back to it, okay? Let's see. Writing an effective submission letter. So submission letters are sometimes called cover letters. It's sometimes called letters of explanation. A submission letter is usually written by immigration consultants or lawyers to provide more details to the officer or provide like highlighting specific things that they'd like to, talk about or to really guide the officer in their analysis and providing context and explanation so that you really control the narrative instead of just like throwing something at them and hoping that they will assess it based on what you think they should use. And then the second thing is if you write a very strong submission letter, if the application is refused, there is a stronger probability that you have enough information inside the application to go and potentially win when you do a JR when you seek leave for judicial review in federal court. And so what a lot of lawyers and consultants talk about when preparing applications is yes, there's a minimum requirements, but a lot of people should prepare a comprehensive application that is JR proof, judicial review proof. The reason behind that is officers are people, they make mistakes all the time. And so if they refuse the application, they're not willing to reconsider it, etc., then you need to fight for it in court. And you cannot provide new evidence during a JR, right? And so you need to make sure that every piece of information that leads to a positive decision of your application is included originally. I got a question from Kathleen. What about working full-time during a scheduled break and during the co-op? Does that affect my eligibility? So if you are on a scheduled break and you studied full-time in the semester before, and you are studying full time in the semester after, then you're allowed to work unlimited hours during the scheduled break. And so working a full time job plus a co op doesn't impact. So a submission letter can be like it could be very short, honestly, because PGWP applications, many of them are very simple in nature. And so when you take a look, the key things you would watch out for is you provide a bit of a background about who you are and why you're applying, eligibility and purpose of the application. Discretionary factors are usually things that you want to point your officers, eyes to so that they can use discretion if possible. So let's say you had, you know, authorized leave or like issues around non-compliance. Things like that would be explained here. And then in the end, you would include all of the documents submitted. As part of the submission letter, if you have a complex case, it might be worthwhile taking a look at federal court cases, judicial review for similar cases, and find something that really puts your application in a good light. Then you can also include things like that. So if you take a look at some of the submission letters that I've written, it could be as simple as this, where it's just like background, other considerations, documents submitted, boom, please approve the application. It could be as simple as this. But in some cases, it could be as long as, 5 or 6 pages. I've had a submission letter that was over 50 pages long for a very complex case before as well. And so it all depends on your situation for the submission letter, okay? We're going to go talk about tracking your application and also following up with IRCC and also taking a look at what to do if you get refused. But let's see, there is a question that came in. Good evening. I have 2 questions. I have a bachelor's degree back home and I got a diploma here in Canada. Which one is higher? The bachelor's degree is usually going to be higher, unless the diploma is like a post-grad diploma that requires a bachelor's degree. I finished my co-op 1 and 2 during my program. Do I need to include that as my employment history? Yes, you should include that as part of your employment history. But like I said, I don't know if you were listening, but employment history is not required in the application form. So you can decide what you want to do. Okay, so let's talk about tracking your application. So normally you're going to be applying for your PGWP using your IRCC secure account or your GCKey portal. So that's going to send you updates whenever there is an update, but you can also use the IRCC application status tracker. You create an account and you link your application and they'll let you know what stage your application's in. I don't use it because it always has issues with logging in and it's not always useful. Second thing is if you feel like your application's taking too long and you'd like to see what stage it's at, you can submit an ATIP request. An ATIP request is an access to information and privacy online request. You're requesting your personal information from the government. And so you can ask for GCMS notes, which is the Global Case Management System. It's the software that IRCC uses to manage your application. If you request that, it'll tell you what stage your application's in. And if your officer has made any notes, there will be officer notes on it as well. And then IRCC processing time is another page you should be paying close attention to because this, updates quite frequently. Right now, if you take a look at the work permit for, applications made in Canada, the average processing timeline is 212 days. So all of these are things that you would use to kind of track your application after you've submitted it. And let's say that it's 212 days processing right now, 212 days have passed. What can you do to follow up with IRCC if there's any, problems? Or let's say during the process, you need to update them with new documents, your address has changed or whatever it is. You would be using something called the IRCC web form where you choose whatever reason that you'd like to do. Let's say you'd like to update your application, start web form, you choose whatever is needed and you submit the web form. This goes directly into the application. Sometimes it takes some time for them to take a look at it and respond back to you, but that's the process. And then for cases that are let's say that 300 days have passed since you submitted the application, I would definitely follow up through web form and let them know that there's an unreasonable delay in the application and you'd like a status update. At the same time, you can contact your local member of parliament. Members of parliaments have meetings with IRCC quite on a consistent basis. And so you reach out to whoever is your local member of parliament, email them. They usually will have like a form and what information they want from you. And you provide them all that information. And during their meeting with IRCC, they'll figure out, an update on your application. The only thing to keep in mind is a lot of people are like, oh, like reach out to an MP, but like 9 times out of 10, the response you're going to get when you reach out to a member of parliament is that, oh, your application's still being processed. It's in this stage. And nothing else. Sometimes reaching out to an MP does help. I've had cases where people's PGWP applications were not being processed for some reason. I don't know if they forgot about it or something, but you reach out to an MP and it starts moving again. But not all of it leads to something like that. So just take that with a grain of salt. And then if there's really, really excessive processing times, you can reach out to a lawyer who can, try and put in like a writ of mandamus. It's basically like if the judge assesses positively, then they're basically forcing them to make a decision. Usually the judge will not decide in that way. It's more of, I would say, like a threat tactic that you use, that I'm going to, file a writ of mandamus to try and get them to respond. But those are the options that you have in front of you. But the vast majority of you here today are going to be receiving a decision soon. And then the last thing to kind of cover today is how to deal with refusals. Refusals happen for any number of reasons. You could have made a mistake. Your consultant could have made a mistake. Not that I've ever made a mistake, but your consultant could have made a mistake. The IRCC officer might have made a mistake. So any number of reasons, right? But when you receive a refusal, the first thing you need to do is calm down, sit down, and understand the reason for refusal, because that's going to prove to you what you're going to need to do. You review your application, everything that you've submitted, to see if there was any mistakes or if there was any reasons that the officer should have refused the application. You should also request GCMS notes, because you'll see officer notes. Usually nowadays when they refuse, they'll provide it. However, I would still request it in case they left something out. And then after you've reviewed everything, if you believe that the officer is the one that made a mistake, then you can request reconsideration and, highlight the fact that you made no mistake and they should reconsider it. Reconsideration requests are kind of an awkward thing because it's not a official process that IRCC acknowledges, really. And so when you submit a reconsideration request, there's no set standard for like, are they going to reply to you? When are they going to reply to you, etc. And so, I would use it sparingly, because you never know what's going to happen with reconsideration. And so when you have the option to reconsider or to reapply, some people make the decision to reapply instead, because when you reapply, the application's been submitted and you can follow up with that application number. However, reapplication for PGWP is hard, because right now the average processing timeline is over 200 days, but the requirement is that you need to apply within 180 days from the date that you complete your studies, right? And so in a case like that, you're no longer eligible, so you can't reapply. And so that's the situation that a lot of our group members are experiencing right now, and that's why everyone's really frustrated. And then the other option is, if you know you made no mistake and your application was tip-top, then you can seek judicial review by getting the help of a immigration lawyer. And so judicial review would be seeking judicial review to go and tell the judge that the officer reached that decision unfairly or incorrectly. You provide all that proof, and if correct, then normally 9 times out of 10 IRCC will acknowledge that, and they'll be like, hey, let's not go to court over this, let's settle, we'll send it to another officer for decision. But if they disagree, then usually it'll go in front of a judge where everyone will present their case and the judge will make a decision. That's everything. If you guys found the session helpful, it's obviously something I do to try and help out the group members. But if you found it helpful, if you can take a, photo of the QR code and leave me a quick Google review. You don't need to write anything, just a 5-star Google review. If you can, would be super helpful because it helps us show up online. In the meantime, let's answer some questions. So let's see. Wenchi, when is the time to do web form? How many months? Thanks again. So Wenchi, it depends on what you are web forming for, but if you are asking following up regarding, let's say, excessive timing or requesting an update on your application, I wouldn't submit any web form until at least the number of processing days listed on their website passes. Because if you message them any earlier, you're requesting an update on something that normally wouldn't have received a decision at that point, right? And so that's just clogging up their system and slowing them down even more. So I wouldn't. But if you have new documents to send them, if you have to update them on something, then you have to web form them as soon as there's a change, okay? And then secondly, Samshad, let's see. Your question is, hi, thanks for such a useful session. Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you being thankful. I recently submitted my PGWP application, already transitional work permit until the final decision comes. So what you have is not a transitional work permit. Please keep that in mind. It's just interim work authorization. It is not a work permit, does not give you status in Canada. You have maintained status. I have included one letter of completion, unofficial transcripts, IELTS certificate, the IM form, no additional documents for my study permit application. I was refused twice, but in the IM form, I only mentioned one refusal date and approval date. Can this matter be huge? Also, my second question is, had I to include any other statements of letter? Samshad, I'm not 100% sure exactly what your situation is, but if you're refused 2 times and you wrote that you were only refused 1 time in the background declaration, that is a mistake. And I would web form them and let them know that you made a mistake and submit a new IM5710 form, updating that mistake and letting them know what's changed with a letter. I don't know why your initial application was refused 2 times. If you only included the documents that you mentioned in the comment, then you obviously didn't include all the documents required. It wouldn't have even let you submit the application. So I'm assuming that you did submit more more documents. But without really understanding your situation, I can't really say what other documents should be included, what would be helpful or whatnot. And so I would just say, if you need to talk about it and you have serious doubts, then you can reach out to me. But I probably won't be able to help considering you've been refused 2 times. But yeah, if you need help, reach out to me. I can have a consultation with you. You can visit me at migration.ca. Let me just put that in. Let's see, how can I put this up? I can put text migration.ca. Oh yeah, it's on the banner. Yeah, you can visit me at migration.ca. That's my website. Let's see. I think another question came up. Let's just see. Jean Cruz. Hi, we recently got married last December 18, 2025. Congratulations on your marriage. Our marriage certificate is expected to be released January 18th, and my husband will be applying for his PGWP today because he received his completion letter. We plan to apply together. Is it okay if we submit the marriage certificate through IRCC web form? No, I recommend that you wait until the marriage certificate arrives so you can prove the relationship. Although you could submit it separately, and I don't anticipate that there is going to be a problem, there could be a problem. And now knowing that applications are taking 200 days plus, do you really want to risk, the ability to work 10 days to being refused potentially and having to do the process all over again, losing status in Canada and then not being able to work during the restoration application? It's just not worth the risk. And so 100%, I would just say wait until you have all the documents to prove you meet the requirements of the program. Your question here is, I have a medical exam in November 2023 for study permit and planning to apply for the PGWP 2 weeks from now. As I plan to work in daycare, should I get a new medical, or the one I had for my study permit is okay to upload? So there's a temporary public policy that allows for previous medical examinations to be sufficient. And so you would need to include it in the client information. You would also need to, mention it in the letter of explanation, just so the officer's aware. And then secondly, you do need to make sure that you are reviewing that temporary public policy in detail to make sure you're eligible. So let me find that for you. Public policy exam. All right, so I'm just gonna put it in chat so you can go read it. I think I put it in chat. Let's see. Yeah, I just put it in chat. Go take a look at it and see if you meet all the requirements. If you do, then yeah, you can use your previous medical examination. Oh, Samshad, you're talking about a study permit application. Since this webinar is focused solely on PGWP, I am going to be just answering questions around PGWP at this point. I'm also just not 100% confident that I understand what your situation is, and I want to refrain from giving you advice that's not actually fit for your situation. Guys, the webinar is over. No new questions are coming in. I'm going to give you maybe another couple of minutes to see if there's any other questions from everyone. If not, I'll end the webinar here. Again, I appreciate it if you guys could leave me a Google review. That'd be super helpful, but don't need to, obviously. And yeah, if you want, let me know in the Facebook group later on what other type of content you would find helpful, because I'd be happy to do other webinars. And I also know that a lot of you are going to be taking a look at probably permanent residency, and so PR is something that we can also help out with. The thing that we do with a lot of people is figure out PR pathways for people in your situation, because the thing is, there's about 80 different PR pathways in Canada, but they're mostly all small. There's only a few major ones, right? And it also depends on where you're living, because there's PNPs and stuff like that. And so what we usually do is a PR pathway service where we sit down, we list out all the options that might be potential for you, and we figure out priorities and what steps are needed to actually get to a stage where you can actually apply, right? After we do that, we meet on a quarterly basis and we sit down, we update your information that we have on file about you so that we understand, what's changed. Is this PR program still the best PR program for you? And basically, we keep doing that until you become eligible for PR at some point, right? And at that point, whatever money that you've paid for the PR pathway service, that is used as credit towards whatever full representation. And so you're basically not paying for the PR pathway at all if you use our services for permanent residency in the future. And so it's kind of a way that we've come up with to make sure that you guys are getting support during the process, because what we realized was that, from now until becoming eligible for PR is actually the most important part. But you guys usually don't have any support in that sense. And so just keep that in mind. Reach out to us if you have any questions. And since no questions are up and I've been blabbering on for 2 minutes, I hope you guys have a great evening, and I'll talk to you in the next webinar. Bye-bye.